Hey guys, welcome to the video on calculating tax. Now, I have a little confession for you. I got 13 minutes into this video and realized I had been muted the entire time. So you would have been watching a completely silent video and just watching me ghostwrite on the screen. So what I will try to do this time is actually go a little bit faster because I've already run my mouth for 13 minutes. But here we go. Take two. The kind of tax that you encounter the most in eighth grade is called sales tax. And sales tax is an additional cost that is added to the purchase of items called goods or services. So I think when you go to the store, let's say you want to buy a water bottle that costs $2. Okay. When you get to the register, it's not going to just cost you $2. It's going to cost you $2 plus sales tax. And the way that the sales tax is calculated is by using a percentage. So if you're buying a cheaper item, you're going to pay less tax. And if you're buying a more expensive item, you're going to pay more tax. In Roanoke City, the base sales tax rate is 5.3%. Or excuse me, in all of Roanoke County and everything. It's 5.3%. So if you go to the store and you want to buy a pair of shoes, 5.3% of that cost is going to be added onto the price of the shoes. Now, as far as figuring out how much sales tax you owe on something, we have four methods to show you. The first method is to use a model. So let's read and let's discover this. Carly took her mom shopping at the mall. Her mom finds a sweater that she likes for $60. If the sales tax rate is 5%, how much tax will she pay? So if you watched the video or were in class when we did the notes page on benchmark percentages, 5% is one of the percents that we talked about. It's basically 1 out of 20 pieces on a bar model or a circle graph or a cake or a pizza or anything. This bar model isn't split into 20 pieces. It's split into 10. But we can pretend it's 20 if each of those 10 was also cut in half. So 5% of this bar model is going to be half of one of these blocks. So I'm going to shade that in, and then we're going to talk about what that means. Okay, so we know that that's 5%. Let's write it down here. Out of 100%, which you can see down here at the end. But for that to tell us anything, we have to know a dollar amount that corresponds to. So 100% of the sweater was $60. That's the entire price. 50% of the sweater is $30. That's already marked on the bar model for us, and half of 60 is 30. So that makes sense. But I don't know how much 5% is. So I have to figure out how much each one of these sections is worth. And since we have 10 of those sections and the whole thing is worth $60, I'm going to divide that to figure out that each piece means $6. So this first one is $6, then $12, then 18, then 24, 30, etc. So each one of those sections represents $6. And I didn't shade a whole section. I shaded half of a section. So that would be $3 because 3 is half of 6. Now, if this method makes a lot of sense to you, that is awesome. I love that for you. Use it as much as you want. But if you're a little bit iffy on where these numbers came from, this isn't something that we're going to force you to use in your calculations. Just know that it could show up on a test or an activity or a worksheet or in a discussion, or this could be something that we ask you to think about because for somebody else in your class, this may be the method that they like the most. Okay, so let's answer these questions. How much tax will Carly pay? She'll pay $3. What's the total she will pay for the sweater? Well, she's not walking out of the store only paying $3. So she's going to pay the $60 that the sweater costs, and she's going to add the $3 for the tax, which means the total that she's going to spend is $63. Okay? That's method number one. Method number two is to estimate. And I really like the estimation method. It doesn't work every time on every problem, but I really like it. So let's jump into it. Taylor is buying a new pair of shoes for $195. In his state, the sales tax rate is 9.56%, which is a lot. Estimate the amount of tax that Taylor will have to pay on the shoes. So when I'm estimating, I'm not going to use Desmos for anything. I'm going to use those benchmark percentages that we talked about before. And 9.56% is a yucky percent, but it's really close to 10%. And 10% was one of my benchmark percentages. I can deal with 12. I can deal with 10%. Okay, so I'm going to round that to 10, and I'm going to figure out what 10% of the price of these shoes is. But I'm going to get a little bit lazier even. $195 isn't a really messy number, but I'm going to round that up to 200 just so that every number I'm using in this problem is simple. I'm going to figure out what 10% of $200 is. And I'm going to show you how to do that in your head without using Desmos. So the reason I like this method so much is because I can find 10% of any number really, really quickly. And the way I do that is I start at the decimal, which 200 doesn't have one, but it's there at the end. And I'm going to move my decimal one place to the left to right there. And that's going to give me my answer. So 10% of $200 is $20. So estimate the amount of tax that Taylor will have to pay on the shoes. I estimate that Taylor will have to pay $20 of tax. Now, I'll show you how to get an exact answer in method number 3, but that is a really good estimate. So if we're asked for how much tax, we could say 20. But then this second question here is asking for the total. So we can still round, we can still estimate. If we said the shoes were about $200 to begin with, and we are estimating that we will pay $20 in tax, that means that the total price for my shoes will be roughly $220. Okay, not perfect, not an exact science, but it's a good estimate. Let's look at the two methods for getting exact answers. And this method, the percent of method, is probably our favorite for getting a quick, exact answer. So let's read this question and I'll show you how to do it. Sophia buys a necklace that costs $120. The sales tax rate is 6.5%. How much tax will Sophia pay on the necklace? So all we have to do for this is take whatever the percent is, whether it's pretty or yucky or whatever, type it into Desmos, type in the price of the item, and then it will give me my answer. So 6.5% of $120 is $7.80. So to answer how much tax will Sophia pay, it's $7.80. Now, to find the final price of the necklace, I'm going to take the original price, the $120, and I'm going to add the tax. But in Desmos, I'm going to do that a special way. I'm going to click the button that looks like this. because that means answer, and it's going to bring down the answer from the previous line so that there's no chance of me making any mistakes while I'm typing. So I'm going to click that and it'll add it for me. $127.80 is my total. All right. So that's how you do it with percents. And you can go back and check those first two to make sure that they work if you want to. I'm going to move on to the last method, which is decimals. And we are 3 minutes ahead of where we were the first time I recorded, because when I got to 13 minutes, I was just starting this example. So you're welcome. Let's see if we can get the whole thing done in just a couple more minutes. This one is going to be using decimals. And this is what the question says. Marcus is buying a scooter for his nephew. The scooter costs $29.92, and the sales tax in his city is 9%. How much tax does Marcus have to pay? Now, I could estimate this answer and find 10% of $30, but it's not asking me to estimate. It's asking me to get an exact answer using decimals. So the way that I do that is I take my percent and I have to change it into a decimal first. And the way I do that is to divide by 100. So in Desmos, I'm going to do 9 divided by 100, and that's going to change it into a decimal for me. And then I'm going to multiply that answer by the price of the scooter. And the way that I'm going to show that multiplication is with parentheses. In 8th grade, we don't really like to use the X for multiplication anymore, and I don't want to use the dot symbol because there's already so many decimals in this. I'm going to use parentheses. You can type it into Desmos however you want. You can use that dot. I just don't want to handwrite it. I'm afraid it's going to get confusing. And I get an answer that doesn't quite look like money, so we're going to round it to the hundredths and make it look like money, 2.69. So how much tax does Marcus have to pay? He has to pay $2.69 of tax. What is the total amount Marcus will pay for the scooter? Remember, we're going to put the original price into Desmos, and then we're going to push that ANS button so that we don't make any mistakes typing. As I literally make a mistake. There we go. So the total that Marcus will pay is $32.61. I'll tell you right now, one of the most confusing things that they will do, and they is anybody who makes a test question, right? Your teacher, the SOL, a benchmark, a textbook, whoever. One of the trickiest things that they can do is try to confuse you about which answer you need. So if the question says, how much tax does Marcus pay? That's $2.69. But if the question says, what's the total amount Marcus will pay? That's $32.61. So you have to be really careful about that. And there you go. There's the 4 methods for finding tax in just under 14 minutes. Bye, guys.